Welcome to the Silence 101, the channel where shadows whisper the darkest tales and mysteries unravel in the stillness of the night. I'm your host, diving deep into the strange, the mysterious, and the downright chilling. From eerie legends to real-life horrors, we uncover stories that will leave you questioning the boundaries of reality. If you're ready to face the unknown, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, light a candle, and join us in the silence. Because today, we're descending into the abyss of one of the most horrific industrial disasters ever recorded, the Byford Dolphin diving bell incident. There's an old saying in the industrial world, a saying that carries the weight of countless lives lost. The rules and regulations are written in blood. If you've ever worked in a dangerous job, you'd understand this all too well. Some rules seem like common sense, so obvious that it's almost laughable they need to be spelled out. Others, though, are so oddly specific, so hauntingly precise, that you can't help but wonder what tragedy birthed them. The story I'm about to tell you is one of those tragedies, a catastrophe so horrifying that it forced an entire industry to rewrite its safety protocols overnight. This is the story of the Byford Dolphin, a semi-submersible drilling rig that became the stage for a nightmare in 1983. A nightmare that claimed 5 lives in the most gruesome way imaginable. Let's set the scene. The Byford Dolphin was a marvel of engineering for its time, a floating fortress built to drill oil wells in the harshest environments on Earth. Owned by the Norwegian company Dolphin Drilling, she was completed in 1974 and spent decades working in the treacherous waters of the North Sea. She was a semi-submersible rig, meaning she could partially submerge herself to stay stable in the roughest of seas, towed from one location to another by tugboats. With a capacity to house up to 102 crew members, she was powered by engines that allowed her to move at a modest speed of 4.5 knots. For over 40 years, the Byford Dolphin drilled wells across the globe, her steel hull enduring the relentless battering of waves and storms, until she was finally scrapped in 2019. But in 1983, she was in her prime. Or so it seemed. To understand what happened on that fateful day, we need to talk about the divers. If you've never worked in offshore drilling, you might not realize the critical role divers play in this industry. These aren't your average recreational divers swimming with tropical fish in crystal clear waters. No, these are saturation divers. Men who work in some of the most hostile conditions imaginable, hundreds of feet below the ocean's surface. They're paid extraordinary sums of money for a reason. Their bodies are pushed to the brink, their joints and organs slowly deteriorating with every dive despite the precautions taken. The work is grueling, the hours are long, and the risks are astronomical. When something goes wrong down there, it doesn't just go wrong. It goes catastrophically, horrifyingly wrong. Saturation diving is a unique beast. Divers live in pressurized chambers for weeks at a time, their bodies adjusted to the crushing pressure of the deep sea. This allows them to work at extreme depths without needing to decompress after every dive, a process that can take hours or even days. On the Byford Dolphin, the setup was designed for efficiency. The rig had its own diving infrastructure, meaning they didn't need a separate support vessel. This saved time and money, but as we'll see, it also introduced risks that would prove deadly. Here's how it worked. The divers would enter a diving bell, a small pressurized capsule that would be lowered into the ocean. From there, they'd exit the bell to perform maintenance or repairs on the rig's underwater equipment. The bell was connected to 2 decompression chambers on the rig via a passageway called the trunk. The chambers were kept at a pressure of 9 atmospheres, 9 times the pressure we experience on the surface, so the divers could move between the bell and the chambers without undergoing lengthy decompression. It was a system that had been used safely hundreds, if not thousands, of times around the world. But on November 5, 1983, that system failed in the most unimaginable way. Let me introduce you to the men involved that day. There were 6 men, directly, tied to this operation. On the outside, managing the equipment were 2 dive tenders, William Crammond and Martin Saunders. These men were experienced, well-versed in every aspect of diving operations. Inside decompression chamber 2 were 2 British divers, Edwin Arthur Coward and Roy P. Lucas, who had just returned from a dive and were resting. And moving from the diving bell toward Chamber 1 were two Norwegian divers, Bjørn Bergersen and Truls Hellevik. These men were a team, their lives intertwined by the dangerous work they did together. But in a matter of seconds, their lives would be torn apart, some quite literally. The procedure that day should have been routine. The diving bell had been raised back to the rig after a dive, and the divers were transitioning between the bell and the decompression chambers. The process was simple: seal the diving bell, close the door to Chamber 1, and then depressurize the trunk so the bell could be disconnected. This would keep the chambers and the bell isolated at their high pressure of 9 atmospheres while the trunk returned to the ambient pressure of 1 atmosphere. It was a procedure these men had done countless times. But this time, something went horribly wrong. One of the dive tenders, William Crammond, according to most accounts, opened the clamp that sealed the trunk. The problem? The door to Chamber 1 was still open. In an instant, the 2 chambers and the trunk equalized their pressure, going from 9 atmospheres to 1 atmosphere in a fraction of a second. The result was catastrophic. The diving bell, still attached to the trunk, was forcibly ejected by the sudden pressure change, striking and killing William Crammond and one of the tenders outside. But what happened inside the chambers was far worse, something so horrifying that it's hard to comprehend. Truls Hellevik, one of the Norwegian divers, was standing at the door between the chambers when the pressure equalized. He was caught in the narrow opening, exposed to the full force of the pressure differential. What happened to him is the stuff of nightmares. His body was forced through the small gap with such violence that his abdominal cavity was bisected. His torso was literally torn in half. His major internal organs were ripped out of his chest and abdomen, propelled by the explosive decompression. 3 parts of his body were found 10 meters, over 30 feet, above the incident site, scattered across the rig. His death was instantaneous, a small mercy in the face of such unimaginable trauma. The other 3 divers, Edwin Coward, Roy Lucas, and Bjørn Bergersen, suffered a different but equally horrific fate. The rapid pressure change caused the nitrogen in their blood to form bubbles, a phenomenon known as the bends. But this wasn't the slow, painful version of the bends that divers dread. This was a turbocharged nightmare. The massive pressure drop caused the nitrogen in their bloodstream to flash into bubbles instantaneously, lowering the boiling point of their blood to the point that it boiled within their veins. Their entire cardiovascular systems essentially fried in milliseconds. Like Truls, they likely didn't have time to realize what was happening, a small mercy in an otherwise merciless tragedy. 5 men lost their lives that day, and the aftermath was as chilling as the incident itself. The Byford Dolphin was using outdated safety equipment, a fact that had been noted by workers and regulatory bodies before the accident. There were no mechanical interlocks or fail-safes to prevent the chamber doors from being opened if there was a pressure differential. Instead, the system relied on human operation and interpretation, a fatal flaw. Reports from before the incident also mentioned other issues: sealing valves that were over-rotated, leaving gaps even when the indicator showed they were closed. In the wake of the disaster, blame fell heavily on William Crammond, who was accused of opening the clamp without confirming the chamber door was shut. But was it really just human error, or was the system itself a disaster waiting to happen? The families of the victims fought for answers and justice for decades. One relative accused the Norwegian government of covering up the true cause of the incident, claiming the rig's operators were more interested in protecting their reputation than admitting fault. It took 26 years for some of the families to receive compensation for their loss, a bitter victory after so much time had passed. Meanwhile, the Byford Dolphin continued to operate, drilling new wells around the world until she was finally scrapped in 2019. But the legacy of that day in 1983 lived on, etched into the rules and regulations of an entire industry. This tragedy forced a reckoning in offshore drilling. Companies could no longer cut corners with outdated systems. New safety protocols were implemented worldwide, ensuring that mechanical fail-safes and interlocks became standard. The Byford Dolphin incident became a grim reminder of the price of negligence, a price paid in blood. But even today, the story lingers in the minds of those who work in the industry, a haunting cautionary tale whispered in the shadows of rigs and diving bells. I've always been fascinated by stories of decompression gone wrong. There's an urban legend about a diver in one of those old-timey helmets, his body forced up into the helmet by a sudden pressure change. I remember hearing that Mythbusters once tested the theory and proved it could happen. A chilling thought. The Byford Dolphin incident, though, is no legend. It's a stark, horrifying reality, a reminder of the dangers that lurk beneath the waves, where the line between life and death is as thin as a whisper in the dark. That's all for today's descent into the unknown on the Silence on 01. If this tale of the Byford Dolphin left you chilled to the bone, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories that unravel the mysteries of the world. We'll be back with another haunting journey soon, so keep your candles lit and your ears open for the whispers in the silence. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe in the shadows. Goodbye.